City of Palatka audio system. This is a test.
Welcome to everybody. We'll go ahead and get started, and we'll start with roll call. John Browning, absent. Wayne McLean. Here. Mr. Rawls. Melissa Miller.
Here.
Ken Johnson.
Here.
Dana Jones. That's wonderful. Well, thank you. Welcome to every one of you. And I had a few thoughts in continuation of the memorial from Monday. And if I could read just a few quotes, maybe, please. The first is "Home of the free because of the brave." The second is "The patriot's blood is the seed of freedom's tree." And then one from General Douglas MacArthur that said, "No man is entitled to the blessings of freedom unless he be vigilant in its preservation." And then lastly, from John F. Kennedy, it said, "As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter the words, but to live by them." And I think that leads us into why we're here today. Aviation has played such an important role in America's freedom. Back in World War I, there were 50 U.S. Army pilots that were awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. And all that was the beginning of aviation's role in freedom for America that we're still helping to preserve today. And those of us that serve here today and care about and give to our airport are in the business of protecting and guiding aviation's role in freedom still. And I want to say a word of thanks to each one of us. I'd like to make notable mention of Mr. Holmes and your group's wonderful event last weekend and how well that went. It's really wonderful. Also, I think Mr. Holmes has a family member that last Friday became a Marine aviator, and that's a big deal. And that's definitely part of our freedom, fight for freedom. So wonderful. Yes. So we have a female aviator in the Holmes family, and I think she's flying the Ospreys. So that's a real nice thing. Difficult. I'm sure. And Andrew, welcome to you, sir. It's nice to have you back, and congratulations on your 50th anniversary. You've sure done a lot for our community. This aviation board, airport advisory board, excuse me, has enjoyed watching the progress that Passero has helped us to enjoy, and along with FDOT. So thank you very much. That's all the comments I had. It's open for public comments. Does anybody have a public comment? Yes, sir.
I have one. AOPA has announced, the Aircraft Owners Association has announced that they are giving out to schools that requested a STEM program for this. AOPA has announced that they're giving out a program to schools that requested on the STEM, which, as you may know, is science, technology, education, and math, based on aviation. And I would like to encourage us to maybe get in contact with this principal of the school and see if they would be interested in that.
I believe NQI Roberts, aren't they actually involved in that? I believe they are.
Sure they have a STEM program out there.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, in aviation also. The aviation part of it, I believe. I'll double check that, and I'll send out a little note. Well, I can't send it out. I'll send it out to you and let him send it out to everybody. I'll double check. John Theobald's my neighbor, and I'm almost positive they have a program out there, but I'll find out.
Thank you very much, and thank you. Okay, I think if there's no other comments, then we'll move on to item number, I better use the right agenda. Item number 4.
No?
Yes.
Can approve the minutes.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, I forgot 1B. So I'd like a motion, please, to approve the minutes from our April 6, 22 meeting.
So move.
Okay, do we have a second? Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, now, Mr. Yule, we'll turn the meeting over to you for number 4, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a request. So in the interest of spending a little bit more time on the leasing policy summary. Could I just give you kind of a brief, can we switch the business report with the leasing summary?
Yes.
Because I think the engagement on the leasing policy is going to be really, really neat, you know, and we're going to probably spend more time on that. So if you guys allow me to do that, that'd be great. We can switch it. Okay, appreciate it. Well, good afternoon. It's good to see each of you again. I believe the last time we saw each other was a couple months ago. A lot of things have happened, and we are certainly progressing. We'll continue to progress. For the month of April, the numbers look really good. I'm not going to say great, but certainly, you know, one of these days I'll say great, and it's going to look totally different. But as shown, you know, the field sales have been really good for us and really steady. A lot of that is based upon our ability to adjust the rates every week. You know, we have to look at what the market price is coming in each Monday, sit down and just try to back into it and look at, you know, how do we make something off of this? As I stated to you in my initial meeting with you, my goal is not for us to be the lowest in a sense. So I don't use the C word anymore. So I'm gonna just say we're going to be competitive in that 50-mile radius. That has shown to be very, very wise for us. Folks come to us that typically will go to St. Augustine. We don't charge a landing fee. Some of these corporate guys, to them, that makes a difference. If they're coming in, they'll buy 500 gallons of gas, you know, a jet, you know, and they don't have to pay a landing fee. So the cost of operating is making a difference. And we believe if we continue down the road of having that T-hanger program with our aircraft owners and going and pushing the corporate development, corporate activity with jet service, that's going to be our niche and a success story for us. So Jet A, it's up over last year, $17,000. Jet A has been, it's been a very popular field. You know, I look back at the first month of the fiscal year, which is October, and we had made purchases to the tune of probably 4 or 5 before March 1. So October through March 1, you know, there was a lot of purchases for Jet A. And obviously, you know, you're not purchasing unless you're selling it. You know, the jet's been coming in. And again, if I had to look at a factor that was a driver, it was pricing, I'm sure. But it was also folks coming in here that was coming to Putnam County. And I think as a community, we need to really take note of that, because when you're coming in a $20 million jet, you're not coming here just to kind of hang out. You know, you're coming here for a reason. And I really believe those are good indicators of something happening in the community. We want to continue to go down that road. Next slide, please. So can you go back to the avgas? Sorry. So avgas is up you know, $10,000 over the previous period last year. And again, the avgas is typically your aircraft owners. You know, you don't have a whole lot of corporate operators that's purchasing it. You know, but it's doing well. You know, and this is a pricing that ours is lower than you know, the Jet A. You know, for that reason, because we do have our neighbors, our aircraft owners out there, and we are sensitive to that. There you go. So we're up over previous year, this period, last year with our hangar rentals, land rentals, which is the minimum, building and tie downs. You know, we are looking to push out more and more tie down activity at the airport. We think that's an opportunity. We may not have the T hangar supply that's certainly needed, but we found that if you try to kind of upsell them, you know, or on, hey, you know, we don't have the T hangers, but certainly, you know, we can accommodate you on tie downs. So we've started doing a better job and being more consistent as a team, you know, pitching that. And believe it or not, we've been able to get folks to embrace that and come in and do tie downs and those kind of things. So that's just yet another way of maximizing our revenues. You know, we are here to as a enterprise fund. For those that may not know it, you know, we operate based upon, you know, our revenues, you know, and it's our goal, fundamental goal is to be self-sufficient. I told you that from the beginning, and we will continue to push that. That's the expectation at the federal and state level. So we can do it. You know, we can certainly get there if we continue to maximize revenues. And it's not just aeronautical revenues. Okay, I believe there's opportunity for non-aeronautical revenues, but more to come on that. So overall, this time last year, you know, we're up $31,000. Again, the fuel sales, it's being managed very closely. I do not want to rely just on the fuel sales. Obviously, there's other opportunities out there, and I just want you guys to understand that that's the road we're going to go down, because if we're talking about maximizing our revenues, that means more opportunity for development, more opportunities for generating other revenue generating sources. So, you know, we have a business unit to operate in, and we're certainly going to put the best effort forward. All right, airport improvement projects. Actually, the guys are out today. So the LED lighting program and the taxiway are wrapping up. They're putting in the permanent markings as we speak today. But they're also, as part of that, there was a drainage project that was down by the fuel farm area. They are addressing that as well. So we're getting close. Probably this week or next week, you know, those two projects will be totally complete, in which, you know, the lighting system looks really good. There is a difference with LED lighting versus your traditional. New hangar construction. So these are the 6-unit T hangar program. That's supposed to kick off in terms of construction activity in July of this year, and looking for substantial completion to occur probably around December. Now, if I gave you wrong dates, Mr. Olesko can correct me. All right. So, you know, overall, you know, the airport is doing well. You know, it's a work in progress. There's a number of aspects to it that we have to continue to address and work hard at, but you know, we're going to get there. We're getting there. You know, I ask for the patience and support and as much money as I can get for it, because we need resources, that's for sure. Any questions?
Chairman, I got a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
So back on the fuel sales,
Okay.
how much of that is due to the increased cost of fuel?
Well, our adjustment in the fuel prices was a response to the increased cost. Okay. So typically, just based upon previous numbers, the margin was very minimum. For example, you
Right.
go and purchase fuel for $3.30. You're probably selling it for $3.35. that's not doing a whole lot. We're selling it now, it's totally jet. So we're doing at times about $1.25, $1.40 upside on jet.
Okay,
Okay. Now, in terms of do we have a set margin that we're driven by? Not at this point.
yeah, you're managing it on a regular basis.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah. So how are we on gallons sold?
So I will start providing that. Gallons sold, we have that data. I'm
Up,
sure.
down? Just off the top of your
So-
head, up, down?
Jet fuel, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I believe since I've been here, I haven't seen, I was expecting to see 1 or 2 a week or so, but sometimes you get 4 and 5 sometimes, folks coming in unannounced, short-term notice. Now I will also say avgas is up because Amarillo has really started using Palatka Municipal Airport. It has become one of the focal training facilities, to be frank with you, to the point they are looking to try to connect with an existing operator to partner with for maintenance services. So those are good indicators of uptick in activity. And I think when you look back on it, you'll probably see that as a growth indicator.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions regarding the business side of the airport?
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, now for the good stuff. Okay. So, so when I first came on board, I think one of my first meetings, it was a joint workshop. And we think back to my memory here. We may or may not have had opportunity that we were discussing. Somehow I kind of got caught up in, I don't know. I was new, so I didn't know what to expect. I was trying to figure some things out. So, and one of the first things that I realized was that, hey, the best way to get away from losing opportunities because you wasn't ready to have a clear process to get them taken care of is what's the real policy here? How do we accommodate? How do we entertain? How do we service prospective tenants or existing tenants? Obviously, folks that are looking to invest millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in facilities, there's an expectation, and a lot of you guys as business men and women, you understand that as well. So I felt one of my first priorities needed to be a leasehold policy. And it's worked at many, many other places I've gone. It worked at other places that I know of that have my peers there. And it's really a good approach to how you go about taking a project through the evaluation process. And by the time it get to the 35,000 foot level, all of those concerns have been addressed because you had clear general policies, you had clear general guidelines for how you come up with this agreement. You had clear sources for how you come up with the lease rates, the terms, what are key provisions. So I try to do the best I could to try to consolidate this for you guys at the 30,000 foot level, and I hope I did a decent job because, what I want to do is kind of walk through this, give you a good snapshot of, hey, we can get this thing in place. Anybody show up can go through this process, this pipeline. And we can be more efficient and we can turn it around a lot quicker, but also turn around a lot smarter. Because at the end of the day, who wants a large project out there, and you get through the process of negotiations and those kind of things, and all of a sudden the FAA say, no, you can't do that. We want to, in conjunction with our existing partners, your leadership, come up with a policy and a program that eliminates those things. So when you get to that 35,000 foot level, the question should become, wow, how much rent's coming out of this? What's the term? The term is based on this. So it just makes the decision-making aspect of it a little bit smoother, I believe. Any questions before I kind of walk through the policy itself? Okay. So as stated, the goal was to really look at, how do you ensure that there are a lot of hiccups, I would say, minimize the hiccups. And how do you ensure that the interests of the city is protected? The airport, is owned by the city, operated by the city. And as an airport manager, I believe I have a fiduciary responsibility, but also have an obligation of having the city's interests, best interests in mind when we go down these roads of bringing on new neighbors. So this policy will assist us in doing that. So for this policy is set up in 4 sections. The first 3, they're really hitting on the negotiations, the basis of negotiations, the process, the business deal. Section 4 is, as part of this program, is cleaning up our existing hangar waiting list policy. Because obviously, if somebody is coming in interested in leasing a facility, there needs to be a better way of managing the wait list. So that wait list is going to ultimately become a lease eventually. So I felt that this was ideal for this policy as well, because it's going to ultimately become an agreement itself. So section 1, general policy. So this applies to existing, this applies to prospective, short-term and long-term. So the general policy that I'm recommending is more of a higher level, when you go and look at or go down the road of setting up, having conversations, the policy of the airport is, hey, whatever business deal you come to the table with, that should be reflected in these 5 points here. Okay. So the first point being, okay, let's go down the road negotiating something, make sure that the market rents are intended to make the airport financially self-sustaining. Simply put, let's come up with rental rates that are reasonable. Sometimes, we can have rates, and right now, obviously, we can probably use an update. Timing is not good yet, but, we need to have rates that's going to help us get there. That's what really item 1 is really promoting. So anytime we deal with whether it's T hangars or whether it's a $5 million development, that should be our position, our policy on it. We should also look at, whenever we go down the road, we should also keep in mind that our position is, how do we minimize our operating costs? Okay, so a lot of times you can go down the road to negotiate a deal, and at the end of the day, you end up getting stuck with utilities, which can get pretty expensive. You end up getting stuck with other expense. So, typically the lease at the airport are net leases. It may vary, but at the end of the day, you don't see any gross leases. You see a net lease. Typically, the tenant at the airport is going to pay for insurance. Some may pay utilities. I think we got a kind of mixture, but that's another aspect to evaluate down the road. but we need to look at setting up tenants and relationships to where we're not increasing our costs as the city. I will share with you the points that I'm going through now. These are some of the best practice points in the industry. So these are opportunities that are consistent. These are opportunities that are in place in a lot of places. And I'm just kind of trying to help us to get further down the road and in a position that we can move on a lot of opportunities. Item 3, when it talks about fostering growth of aviation, non-aviation development, so that's getting into, let's be proactive about this. We can't keep focused on T hangars. Okay. We can't keep focused on fuel cells. We can't have a kind of a one-dimensional way of looking at the success of the airport. I believe the airport has its own niche. I believe we got that small community T hangar program, and we have that corporate development program. We want corporations based out of Palatka's airport. That's what we want to see. I think that's the niche. I think you have a niche for a maintenance operator to grow and set up shop at Palatka. Bless you. That's our niche. Some places may go and say, okay, we want commercial service and all that. Well, I believe as your airport manager, we have our niche, and you're starting to see small indicators of, we just need to expand on it. We need to push that out there. We need to be more progressive at pushing it out there. I've seen success stories with not just entertaining the local folks that want to do development, but let's do a little bit of marketing and put the airport opportunities out there to the industry, because you just never know what maintenance repair operator may be looking for 50 acres to develop some kind of facility in Northeast Florida. Orlando is busy, Jacksonville is busy, Miami is busy. When you look at a community like Palatka, and now certainly looking at the logistics, you have something to offer. Folks are starting to really pick up and see, okay, well, this is a lot better than the congestion. So 4th, kind of ties in with 3, So when I first got here, it was like up, grant money. Well, I'm not the only one looking for grant money. There's a whole bunch of other airports out there, and I don't expect to get all of it, most of it. A little bit of it, yeah, but certainly I can't rely on it. We can't rely on that. If we have prospects that's willing to come to this community and spend their capital, that's a great place to be. And we certainly need to communicate that. The industry need to know that, hey, these guys are open for business. Because a lot of times what you find with a lot of small community airports, it's the exposure aspect. Now, I'm not looking for larger airport attributes. I'm saying that we have a niche, and we need to be a little bit better at getting the word out about what the offerings are at the Palatka Municipal Airport, as well as the community. So that's certainly a driver. And last but certainly not least, on the general position of it, we have to make sure that everything we do complies with the federal government, the Federal Aviation Administration and Florida Department of Transportation. If every business deal that we do, stays within those guidelines, that's a good place to be. Because again, you don't want to go down the road and not be able to reap the benefits of a promising development because of a misstep. Moving on to section 2. So Section 2 really focuses on.
I have a question.
Sure.
What is your definition of non-aviation development? I've seen small airports completely taken over by non-aviation development.
Yep. I'm not interested in I'm not interested in the airport being driven by non-aviation development, but I will tell you this. There are hayfields, ag opportunities out there. I'm not saying that's for Palatka. I've seen RV lots put on airports. So it's anything that's not generating revenues from the aircraft operation or aircraft owner, facilities and those kind of things. I don't see the Palatka Airport focusing on the typical non-aeronautical sources, but I do believe that currently there may be some opportunities on airport that just a matter of kind of cleaning some things up to generate some non-aeronautical revenue. Now, I take it a step further. So on the commercial side, the significance of the non-aeronautical revenues was to reduce the cost for the airlines. That's a little bit different ballgame than a general aviation airport. You know, whether it's aeronautical or whether it's non-aeronautical, I want the revenues because, you know, I need the resources to put back into the airport facility. So that's not necessarily my primary. You know, my bread and butter is hangars, fuel cells, you know, those kind of things.
And aviation development.
Absolutely. Aviation development from a standpoint of a aviation company coming here and spending their money on a facility, buying our gas, because part of our position as a city, you know, we reserve the right to be the only ones providing fuel cells, you know, which I think is very smart. So, you know, that's part of, I think, some of the things that differentiate us from a lot of other places, certainly the commercial side. You know, the rates are driven differently. Any other questions on that section? Okay, sure. So section 2, so as stated, it lays out more of the general guidelines, okay, of the agreements themselves. And these 3 key points, you know, help us to avoid problems. So the goals of coming from a conformity standpoint. So, you know, as you go down the road of developing these agreements, you got to ask yourself the question, is the use shown to be appropriate and consistent with the ALP and the master plan? Kind of going back to your question earlier about non-aeronautical development. Well, if the ALP or the master plan doesn't show a hotel in this block over here, it's probably going to be pretty tough for you to put a hotel in that block. If that ALP or that master plan is showing hangars, you know, that's going to be obviously the ideal or approved development. You know, a lot of folks don't ask that question when you're going through the process because, you know, and that's basic. You know, use the facility or the grounds for what it's set aside to be used for, designated for. We have a clear ALP. You know, what the excitement that I have for this airport is part of it's coming from what I see on the ALP, which is clear. You have the hangar sites. You know, you have the layout of the airport with designated revenue generation areas, as well as the operational areas, existing operation areas, terminal expansion, those kind of things. You have your plan in place. So, you know, number 1 is making sure that there's consistency with what it's designated to be. 2, looking at, you know, make sure that it doesn't violate any kind of airport grant assurances. Okay, so, you know, we get a lot of grants, but there are some requirements to those grants. So whenever we look at development and enter into these agreements, you know, they lay out what we can and cannot do. So we need to make sure we ask ourselves the question, does these developments or this lease agreement violates any of those things? And certainly lastly, make sure they comply, with the city, rules and regulations, and again, that's the local side of it. Obviously, you'll probably looking at making sure that DOT is involved. And once we get to the process, I think a lot of this will be clear to you guys, because the process is set up to where a lot of this is the due diligence of it is covered before going further down the road anyway. And it's covered through this body.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question on section 2?
Yeah.
And maybe this is for Andrew or, so do you feel, obviously you've looked at the master plan because you've commented on it.
Mhm.
How often should we review that master plan, in your opinion, based upon your experience?
Well, I've seen people open it up, or airports open it up, every 5 years or so. And I'm gonna just throw it out there. So, and Andrew or Mr. Halesko can correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of that is driven by how developed your airport is. Okay, so Palatka is about 700 and some odd acres. You got a pretty clear idea of what your opportunities are for development. Some of these airports got 4 airports and it's 10,000 acres. A lot of things changing, a lot of people moved in and out. You're probably going to spend a whole lot of time opening it up, but for what I have as the airport manager here, I don't see us having or trigger being pulled until we probably started getting a couple of large developments 3 to 5 years down the road in place or online. But at other places, it may be 5 to 10 years because they've done such a comprehensive job on the front end, kind of laying out the roadmap. Mr. Lesko, you can.
Okay, thank you.
Or if I could mention that this is intended also to be a work in process itself.
Yep.
Meaning this, what you're seeing, that policy that there are intended to be a work in process, a draft for you to weigh in on as well. Way too much for you to fully consider in 1 hour meeting. We know that. There was no expectation that you start with individual assessments of individual points, but you'll have something to take with you. And then I agree with Mr. McNair in that having a overall policy that pertains to leasing and development, even if you a blueprint, so to speak, even if you have to change it from time to time, it does help promote consistency as we move forward. So that's what this was designed to do, was be a starting point for us to move forward. We want you to think that we're bringing this to you and saying, this is it, we decided this is what we're going to do. This is a blueprint. We may need to knock out a wall here, add a bathroom here, like building a house, but at least we'll have something we can kind of keep, I guess, in sight as we move forward.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I'm drinking out of a fire hose this morning, but this is worth the time. And I really do. I'd like to do this. I'd like to have him do the same thing on the master plan. If we're going to do this, and this is the right way to do it. We talk about always in a hurry. We want to get this. This is worth taking the time to do it, get it right. And I hope he can do something with the master plan, the same type of thing. And I do believe that we should look at it now that we kind of get a feel. I think we get a feel for what he's doing, is to divide it up, Mr. Chairman, in certain things, like a couple of these sections really, we could spend some time going over as we go. It's hard to remember. I come in here a month later and we've been given all this, and I recommend we put it over a couple meetings rather than try to do, let us read it, let us come back. You know, I know you always leave exactly at 1, no matter what. So we don't want to leave him hanging in the thing. I think we need to give that some, that's just my thought.
I have a comment, sir. One of the things we want to do is look back in the past also, you know, and one of the reasons that our airport's been so successful is because we've had good airport management, which we're continuing, I believe with all my heart. And, but also our legal minds and Andrew telling us what FAA and FDOT want. I mean, that pretty well, like he said, there's not a lot of wiggle room after that, but knowing those things keeps us from spinning our wheels when we're having a meeting. That's my comment.
Other questions, comments? All righty, so in interest of the city manager's comments, I just want to kind of briefly walk through on section 3. So section 3 really deals with the business, you know, the origins of the business side of the house. Okay, you know, because first thing is ask, okay, what about lease terms? What about lease rates? The policy that we're recommending is a policy that is set up kind of is twofold. On the rates and charges, you know, you're going to get your rates and charges developed from appraisal, comparables, because typically these are going to be ground leases. Okay. And, you know, but the policy is not just setting that, having a set rate for it. The rates and charges, and it identifies about 4 items here, lays out that as a body here, we have the ability to say, okay, if a certain level of development comes into place, you have the flexibility to modify or reduce those rates. Because I would tell you, if a university showed up and said, hey, I want to develop, you know, 400 acres of land, and you know, I'm going to have X amount of employees and it's going to be X amount of traffic, that's different. Right.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
So but again, this aspect of it gives you the flexibility to make those exceptions. Terms of lease. Hey, this is one of the key pieces. You know, folks want to know, okay, if I'm going to invest this amount of money, how much time do I have on there to amortize it, or whatever the case may be. So the policy is saying, okay, well, let's look at your initial CapEx, you know, whether it's going to be on an existing, whether it's going to be on prospective or just bare ground. But it's also looking at how many jobs. So there are factors involved here. This particular item number 3 here is looking at, okay, well, we're saying if the median salary in Putnam County is $30-some thousand, you know, $34,000 to $37,000. If somebody come in and do 115% of that existing salary, which will be low 40s, you know, we will use that as a factor to say, okay, well, hey, you know, that will be factored into your term. You know, so again, if you coming in creating jobs, creating higher paying jobs than the average rate, you want to try to have that ability, that flexibility to negotiate and set up a deal that's a win-win for all parties.
Mr. Chairman, quick question, and not to get into the weeds, but let me ask you this, Yul.
Yeah.
Well, number 1, you and I had a sidebar discussion
Yep.
on this. Make a significant initial capital investment. Now, will that be spelled out, or will it be taken on a case-by-case basis?
I would suggest case by case,
Okay.
because as I shared with you, I know of existing projects that, you know, just in conversation with my peers, is not significant investment, you know. So I will tell you this, When big projects come through, there'll be solid enough due diligence to where we'll look at other projects or similar projects. Part of this conversation here is really also to tie in the advisory board, the Paceros of the world, in working through evaluating those opportunities. So I would not say have a fixed box. I would say take it by case by case, because I don't think you're gonna have ideal projects out there. I think you're gonna have some very unique projects that's going to take some unique approaches to.
Okay.
I was just gonna add, in economic development incentivization, we also don't clarify the CapEx because sometimes it's outweighed by a number of jobs, high-paying jobs.
Yep.
So it's kind of like you've got to take each one individual and decide its value to the community that way. So I would agree that it's better to keep those on the vague side, so you have the options.
And I think we're down to about 12 minutes. So if any
Okay.
board members have comments, we're not going to be able to get through all this, but
Right.
we can sure study it for our next meeting. But if you have comments, please keep them rolling while we have a few minutes left. You can keep,
I want to make a comment.
oh, yes.
I appreciate the comment there about the challenges at the airport are unique as it compares to everywhere else. I want to say amen to that. Everything about aviation is unique and should be considered such. And so while we want to structure some things, we also want to we don't want to tie our hands when it comes to being creative, because it is unique. And every single situation is going, we're trying to reduce that as much as we can, but we want to stay creative.
Correct.
Well, I think the challenge is that what we're trying to do, off your statement, is we're trying to find that balance between doing something that provides for consistency. Drawing a balance between something that provides for consistency, but also leaves flexibility. As Mr. McNair mentioned, we only have 700 plus acres. We don't have 10,000 acres to deal with. I think that you're going to have to, by definition, leave flexibility into your policy, but you can still have a touchstone. And I think that's all we're trying to do, is try to create some general policies with the understanding that we, with that limited amount of space, and that sounds like a lot of space, but we all know it's not when you're talking about an airport. You may have some unique opportunities present themselves that are a little bit outside the specific guidelines, but you have to be flexible enough to be able to, to react. So I don't think anybody had the intention on our side of it. Of course, ultimately the city commission decide what priority and significance they attribute to this. But I don't think anybody on our side had the idea of putting together a hard and fast, inflexible platform that you just had to adhere to completely. We wanted a guideline, a touchstone. And so that's what we're seeking your input on.
Thank you.
Are there any plans to do any like marketing pieces after some of this work is done? Because, I certainly agree with you all that, a lot of people are coming in, there's a lot of new things happening, and, you want the highest and best use for those limited acres that we have, those things that create the most jobs and the most economic benefit, community enhancement, and not just grab the first thing that comes along without doing that marketing. So
I 100% agree. You might even heard me say in the past, part of the problem that I believe, this is my personal opinion, that Palatka has suffered from in the past has been we've bought into the concept that something's better than nothing. But personally, something's not better than nothing unless it's worth having. Otherwise, it just takes the place of something that might have come along that would have been better. So, and we all know the examples. There's no need to belabor those points. But we had a jail on the riverfront. I think, I guess. But yeah, we agree. It's just one of those things where we want all of us to be careful. And you know yourselves, we've had those discussions along with Andrew about, for instance, the concept of on a random basis planting big hangars at the airport. We all talked about the fact that whatever we did along those lines needed to be part of a plan. And we needed to understand what we're giving up for what we were getting. And I think that's, the thinking that we're trying to adopt.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to make one comment about marketing. We do actively market for economic development, and aviation obviously is one of our targeted industries. We actually market the county's business park as Putnam County Business and Aviation Park, which, as you know, adjoins the airport. Any kind of electronic brochure that you have, we'd be happy to include that marketing. There's no point in paying for it when you have an economic development agency to take the airport information and deliver it to site selectors and interested clients on your behalf. I've just never had the electronic version of anything other than what I've gotten off the website.
Yes, Ms. Brown.
I think after seeing what happened at the festival, really made me feel good about Palatka. And I'll have to say that you being here, and no disrespect for anybody that's done anything at the airport, it sure is nice to see a business approach to it and a marketing. There are going to be times, I think you're absolutely right, that you come in here and you may charge less for a particular business in order to get them to kindle more like them that might come in there. So I really like this, and I'm glad we're going to take the time to take a couple meetings. Good job. Well done.
Any other comments? We have 5 minutes left.
I was just going to say the same thing. Great job. That's my favorite page. I love a process shown that clear.
Can we go to that just for a couple of minutes? We have 5 minutes. Awesome.
I think we should.
Yeah.
He always stops on time. That's a good thing.
All right. So we can, yeah, absolutely. That's one of my favorite pages also, because what I wanted to do here was show, the heavy lifting is before it even get to the 35,000 foot level. The heavy lifting is the second spot, and that's working with stakeholders. Again, this is not a 100 by 100 hangar that a corporation want to come in and do. Okay, that's fairly straightforward. They gonna want 20 years. So this is one of those big developments, and it's going to require all hands on deck to work through and figure out, okay, so what is this really about here? Is this great for the city? What is this going to do for the city? So first step is obviously getting the applicant, submitting some to us. We're going to do the due diligence before it leave. Well, after it leave us, it may take 1 or 2 trips, or one or two directions. If we go left, it's going left because the term may be extremely long. You keep hearing these 99-year deals. Obviously that stuff going through the FAA and FDOT, those places. Also, non-aviation stuff is going through those guys. It's probably smart to go through and say, okay, is this even authorized use? For smaller operations, you probably won't go to the left. You're gonna probably go straight to recommendations through the city manager for approval with the commissioners. Because again, a lot of those are fairly straightforward. But as stated earlier, the time that it's going to be on the airport level is going to be due diligence. It's going to be evaluating what this is all about and what are the benefits of it. Who is it, and how does this work in the whole grand scheme of things. Because, you know, it should be a fairly smooth process once you get to, well, let me say this a little bit better way. By the time you get to the 35,000 foot level, you know, we should have scrubbed this quite well to where there's no concerns about who, what, why. You know, this is another revenue source that we're bringing online. So that was really the intent and the point of having the airport directly involved, you know, with the advisory committee evaluating this.
Well, thank you, Mr. Yule, very much, sir. And is there any other comments? So we have 2 minutes left.
I just want to go with what John said earlier, and what Don Holmes said earlier. I think let's continue this discussion on this document in the next meeting. Yeah, and give us a chance to review it, and then I'm sure we'll have more questions. So if we could do that.
That's wonderful.
And if you get your review done and I understand time is a commodity that none of you probably have a lot of extra, but if you get your review done and you want to submit some written comments that we can incorporate in something that we bring back to you at the next meeting, it could expedite things a little bit.
That's good. That's a good idea.
And we'll email those to you, or, okay, then we can do that. All right, any other comments? All right, well, thank you all very much for your service here today. And we can stand adjourned, and we'll meet again in 30 days.